Welcome back to our Python class, and today's lecture will be about tuples, another data structure, but you will see there's nothing to be afraid of because it's extremely similar to something we already know, a list data type. Again, the big difference being that tuples are fixed in size, right? And actually, well, generally you'll see there's some things you can add to it. You can mutate some data in it, and some data you cannot mutate. But again, then the question is, if it's so similar to tuples, if tuples are so similar to lists, why should you use them? Well, the reasons could be because they are faster, slightly less bookkeeping for the Python interpreter, so no worries about the size changing, so slightly safer. So in fact, we've been using tuples to return multiple values from functions. And another important consideration is that tuples, at least when they use immutable values inside, can be used as keys in a dictionary. Remember, lists, since they are mutable, you cannot, right? So not all tuples can be keys, but most can. So also philosophically, let's talk about philosophy, or like I said, when you should use which is that lists are for homogeneous data, meaning all same data types, right? Better suited. And for heterogeneous data, meaning of course different data types, right? Mixing different things, right? Tuple is more appropriate. Again, Python does not put these restrictions on you. You can mix and match. You can store same data types have all tuple of all integers or all tuple of all strings if you want, right? But if you have mixed data types, it's generally a better idea to use a tuple. So again, let's get started with a simple tuple. Again, we'll see also, we'll be preloading it actually, so I'm adding basically a kitchen sink here, everything. So I have two strings, I have integer, a float, and a list, and a boolean, and a non-type, and another tuple, and then a dictionary inside. So we'll see that this is going to be a tuple. Yes, so as you see, it's a tuple. And again, the good news for you learners, again, is that it will be extremely similar. Working with tuples will be extremely similar as working with lists, except it will be simpler, right? So how else can we make tuples? These parentheses are generally optional here. Notice we're using regular parentheses, right? Remember, for lists we use the square brackets. For dictionaries, you use curly braces, and for tuples, you use regular parentheses, or possibly we can use actually, quite often we can use just regular skip parentheses completely, and it's going to be a tuple, right? So it's called packing a tuple, so this will be a simple tuple of 3 values, right? And in fact, so just like with lists and dictionaries, we have special tuple. We have a constructor, basically. We can construct tuple using a tuple, right? This, right? So, which will create, for example, we can give a list, right? Another tuple, right? And I'm sure you will see this is another tuple, right? With some values, right? And for example, we'll see we can do a numbers tuple, right? Print my tuple. That's we already printed that. We don't need this, right? So maybe I'll remove it, right? So you won't see it. And you can do something like this. For example, remember, range is an iterable, but it's not like I said, it's half finished. It gives you numbers on demand, right? So you need to use a list or tuple, right? And this will give you a tuple of numbers from 100 to, what do you think, how many numbers? Will 200 be included? Well, let's see. So let's see what Copilot says. Right, so numbers 100 to, yes, 100 to 90. Remember, 200 is not included. Right, thank you, Copilot. And let's see what happens. Yes, 100 to 190. And in fact, you can make a tuple out of characters again, right? If you want, right? VALDIS, right? Could be some reasons, probably not too much, because remember, strings already are immutable, right? So if you make it immutable tuple, not really much, maybe some demands for some parameters for some function. Okay, So the good news, I was already telling you about the good news, is that you can use regular indexing. So my tuple was here, right? So I can use Valdis, right? That's going to be me, right? First one, right? Right. Length is going to be how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? Should be 9, right? So that should work, yes. And I can get the last item just like with our Python indexing for lists, positive, negative, remember, right? Works both ways, right? Right? And of course I can also get it here, right? Print my tuple, we'll get to slicing next, right? 8, right? Not 9, this will be an error, right? Thank you, Copilot, right? And same again, same as above, right? And we get food, potato. So we get actually, so tuple is providing us a reference to a dictionary, right? So how would we get the kefir? How would we get our value? Remember, we just learned about the dictionaries. How would we get it out? Well, we have a couple of ways, right? So first we have to get to the dictionary. So this will be, in this example, we will get we have a dictionary. And then we have the key, right? Drink. We know there's a key and we get a value, right? Here, same thing, drink, right? And of course, Control Z, sorry. We can do get, right? Get the last one, get drink. And this would also work. Of course, get method, since if you're not sure about this key, but of course we do know the key is drink, actually, right? So, again, so all of those will work. And I mean, you could come up with some other ideas too, right? So, you could do 8, my tuple 8, and get as well, right? So kefir, 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 right? So again, now how about list? List is here, right? Where's my list? If you check here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The fifth element is not love here, but it is a list, right? So we will get the list, right? Fifth element, right? Movie reference. So we will do second item, right? So it is what? 20, right? 20, right? So let's try that. And this is going to be whole list, and this is going to be the second item. Indeed, so by getting the fifth element of our tuple, right? We get the list, and list going inside the list, we get the second item. And of course, we could keep going like this. We can also go through our tuple also access. This is like 8 item, right? Also tuple, and we get what? Second item, right? And what is this? -2, that's also second item from the end. So this will be what? What's in the tuple? 5. Okay, we'll get 5. So we'll get number 5. All 5s, right? All 5s, right? Just different ways of accessing. Yeah, right. So that's basic operations. We'll get to slicing next, but again, slicing works exactly the same. So remember again, we can make a tuple when there's no confusion. You can use you can do make a tuple out of 2 items, right? So that's me, right? And so I don't know what's the weight or no, but height probably, right? So it's probably my height, roughly, right? So you get a tuple. Notice when I printed it, right? I get Valdis, right? And so again, you see these round parentheses, right? Well, that sort of indicates, yeah, that's going to be a tuple, right? As you see, square brackets, that looks like a list. And curly braces, well, usually a dictionary, but we'll see there's another state structure for which is using curly braces. So we have a print, right? And yeah, so the idea is this: we can use a tuple as a key in a dictionary. That's why I have a tuple, right? If it's immutable, tuple has no mutable values inside, right? I can use a dictionary, a tuple, right? So notice, right? So I have 2 values, right? And I have this pair of values as a key, right? Again, it's for use for grouping, right? And quite nice again. So I have 2 values, and since they're both immutable, they are extremely well suited for a key here, right? And of course I can use regular string key, because since Python is not insisting we use any special type of keys, right? As long as they're immutable, cannot be changed, you're fine. So of course I can get this 9000 out by using my key, right? So question is now, if I didn't have it as a value, how would I access it? Actually, you can skip it actually. I think you can skip it. So even here, you don't need the parentheses. I mean, this will work, but this also will work, right? So this is actually a tuple here, right? So that's why sometimes this, when you see sometimes something like this kind of syntax later, for example, some libraries such as Pandas is using this, right? Yeah, this is actually a tuple, right? This is actually a tuple, right? So we get, right, all 3x times, we have the same tuple, and of course that's a valid key here, right? And we have no, we get the answer, right? So now we get to the part of immutability, right? Meaning we cannot change things. So something like trivial as this will not work, right? This will not work, and which is of course the purpose. You see, tuple object does not support item assignment. That's great, right? However, right, so that's great, and so most things like the most primitive values you cannot change. However, you should keep in mind that tuples, basically, they store reference to these more complex data types such as lists and dictionaries. So you might be surprised that you can do something like this, right? So remember what's -1, that is dictionary, right? And I can actually mutate this dictionary. So two tuples by themselves are immutable, meaning whatever you store inside, right, stays, right? You store a dictionary inside, it stays. However, you can mutate those data structures which are mutable, right? So you store a list inside a tuple. You can change the values inside that tuple, inside that list. So you see here, I have a food, potatoes, drink, kefir, but I just added a new key using a tuple, right? Actually, so I have a tuple, a big tuple storing data. The last item in the tuple is dictionary, which has multiple keys. One of those keys is actually another tuple, right? And the value is 500. So yes, I can do that. And I can do something like this also. I can change the value using like this, not only set default, right? This will also work. Again, why does it work? Because this is a reference to a dictionary, right? And dictionaries are mutable. So you can change things, right? And I can do something else. I mean, I could do, right? I can add another one, right? I can add something like this, right? I can do water. Sure, why not? I'll go to water diet, right? And my tuple, right? Yeah, so drink is water now. So yeah, again, tuple is immutable, but whatever is inside, if it's mutable, you can mutate, right? So not so simple maybe at first, right? But not too hard, right? So again, so even more interestingly enough, right? We can do things. We can use in-place methods. Remember, what's our fifth element? Is a list, right? Right here, right? So we can use our list methods to it, right? So we say, okay, here's our fifth, or here's, so we don't really care, it's a tuple, here it's basically, when we write this, it's a reference to a list, and we can use extend, which is in place method, right? And it will add some numbers to it, right? You see? We added 1, 2, 3 because I used the extend method, which is in place, right? Same thing goes for append, right? And even sort and pop as well, right? So we'll do some manipulation of a list again, and really the tuple is even sort of say beside the point, right? We are working with a list inside it, right? So you can do all this stuff, right, in place. We can even sort, right? So I'll show you everything. You can go it slowly at home, line by line. But yeah, all the in-place methods will work, right? You see, I have nicely sorted 1, 2, 3, 10, everything else. Again, tuple doesn't care because I was manipulating the inside structure, right? So again, if you don't want things to be changeable, of course you could store this. If this was a tuple inside tuple, like you wouldn't be able to change it, obviously, right? So, but of course you can go deeper and deeper, right? And I can even clear this, right? I can do reverse, right? And I can clear all the in-place methods work, and I have nothing left, right? I have an empty list inside. But again, the key point is here that this is the same list I started with. So as far as tuple is concerned, it said, okay, here's a list, there's a certain list, right? It starts there. What's inside, that's managed by the list, not by the tuple, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Again, right? So, and I'm going, you can do, so let's get to slicing, right? Let's go to slicing. You can do a mini tuple, right? This will work, right? Well, this programmer 45. You can do, of course, things like slicing together, mini 6, let's say 1, 2, 3, and notice how it's all going to overlap, right? Well, this programmer 45, I mean, it's just new tuple. I use 2 slices, overlapping slices, and you know, put them together, right? So, by this definition, how would I make a replace my title to be a teacher instead of programmer, right? So this will not work, right? I can show you, but it's not gonna work, right? Because this is tuple object, does not support item assignment. I cannot change, right? Something actual data point inside my tuple. So what I do is I could make a new tuple, right? This would work, right? So this is actually you can see an instance of where I think this is one place where you do need a parenthesis for tuple. Why? Right? Notice, right? So notice I will use a single item tuple below, right? So this is a single tuple with a single, you know, because I'm adding tuple. That's why if I didn't have these parentheses, it wouldn't work, right? So because I have the comma, right, the syntax would break. That's one of the few cases where you do need the parentheses actually, right? So, and we'll slice together, and we'll have basically what I'm doing is just like I use with remember our string lesson when we concatenated strings. So something very similar, right? So there's some similarities between strings and tuples, right? So yeah, and so now I have Valdis as a teacher, right? And rest is, of course, so I added first item, right? Remember, I didn't do 0 here. Why? Because it would be a single item, it would be a string. I wanted to keep this as a tuple, right? So it's very important, right? On my, I can of course do it here. Show you print now this is a single tuple. Oh, print. Why it doesn't print? Right, so you'll have it again. I want to see how much time we have. I don't want to spend too much time on it, right? So maybe quit, because we also have some sets to go through. And we'll see that this is, of course, also this will be print my tuple, you know, 2, right? And I'm sure you'll see that this is, you know, you see Valdis, right? This is here, right? And this is the rest of it, and I, you know, skipping the teacher part, right? Of course, if you don't like this syntax, what you could do is you could remember lists are mutable, so you can convert a very typical way of working is you keep your data kind of safer in a tuple. You go to a list, right? And then you see at this moment, right? You have a list and tuple, right? Valdis teacher, Valdis programmer. A list has me as a teacher, tuple has me as a programmer, right? So I will change it. Now basically I can go and overwrite my old tuple with a new tuple created from my list, right? Very simple, you know, conversion. And now, of course, I am a teacher now. All right. Again, we saw how we can go do all the regular slicing will work, but again, question is, can you do list tuple comprehensions? Well, not really, right? But there is a similar syntax. So this is actually going to be, if you need a tuple, right, you can do something like this, right? So you need, this is actually a generator, meaning it creates again a factory. So this is going to be slightly faster than list comprehension, right? So we go through element in my tuple. L for L in my tuple times 2. Well, what the heck are we gonna get here? Let's take a look. We are going through first 6 items in my tuple, right? Valdis teacher 45 2000, a list, right? Actually, let me add something to my list here. Right? Let me add something. Append, you know, maybe my tuple append my tuple mine 4, you know, append, you know, append, I don't know, you know, 5,000, yeah. And so we'll see. So I am basically the last three things you cannot multiply. You cannot multiply a single. You cannot multiply none. You can multiply everything else. So let's take a look. What's going to happen here? Very interesting, right? So I have Valdis, teacher, 90, because 45 times 2, of course, 401, same thing. So lists can be multiplied, and also I can multiply true on it actually because it's hiding a 1 underneath, and true became actually a number 2, right? So something to, you know, it's a little trick, maybe not very useful, you know, but something to keep in mind. All right, so we can make generators, right? It's actually a little bit more advanced topic for generators, so we'll say it for another time. But again, it is going to be, if you cast immediately to a tuple, it's going to be slightly faster than doing a list comprehension. But again, depends on your needs, basically what you need to do. Right, so as I mentioned, of course, you can go through and, you know, use a loop, right? Right? True is class boolean, so we can go through all the items, you know, we can loop through all the looping, right? Right? And we can loop over all the tuples. Yeah, I mentioned there's also a way of writing an empty tuple. Sometimes you need to pass an empty tuple. Very rare, right? If you want, right? Because maybe it expects a tuple and you need to give it nothing. So it's possible, right? That's when you need parentheses, right? Again, for 2 more parameters, you don't need this, right? It's optional, right? Yeah, optional. And this is, again, you need the parentheses, you need it here for single item, right? So all are tuples, right? Again, so we only have 2 real methods, right? So my tuple, right? Unlike list and dictionary, we only have 2 real methods. We have count and index. That's it. So very simple. Do count programmers. Yeah. I don't have any 0, but I can do, right? There's no programmers. I can count teachers. There's 1 teacher, right? So I will find the index, right? And Valdis and 45, right? And I can find right here. Yeah. I have 2 numbers, 45 somewhere. No, that's an index. Sorry, yeah. So that's count was 1, but teacher Valdis. So teacher was second. You know, index 1. Valdis was first, index 0, and 45 was index 2. Right. And I can check also membership checking. Right. Right. I can check something using an if. Right. Membership testing. Test. Right. If programmer in my tuple. You know, my tuple index programmer, not found the key, right? So, you know, here we have programmer, right? Not found the key, right? Because we didn't find it, right? There's not, so this, it finds this one, right? So yeah, so that's basically it about tuples. Well, but the last thing is a little trick on tuples coming useful actually is swapping values. One of these assignments, starting assignments, is swapping values. Sometimes, right, you have 2 values, A and B, and you want to change their values. How do you do it, right? You don't have a swap function, you can make your own. Maybe you will be asked to write a swap function. Well, classical approaches do this, right? You need a third value, temporary value, you gave it A is temporary, then, I mean, A is given to temporary, then A becomes B, and B is back to temporary, so you don't lose data, right? Works perfectly. In Python, it is simpler. You can use this syntax, right? So we basically what happens is we are creating a tuple and then unpacking it into values. So these are actually this is actually a tuple and this is unpacked tuple, right? It works very nicely, and you can do it with as many values as you want, right? As much as you want. All right, now a few more things about tuples. You can actually so unpacking. So this is actually technically, so this is a tuple, and this we unpack the tuple. So for example, Let's look at my tuple again. Here, right, 9 items. So you can do something like this. You can unpack whole tuple. On here, notice these these underscores. Again, I'm indicating that I don't care about these particular unpackings, right? So you can get something like this. So of course, name job. So these are just variable names, right? And these two I don't care. I guess I just figured this is not my. And of course, I could have used the real variable names, but this underscore signifies that I don't care, right? So while this teacher, everything works, right? All the data is there, right? So that's already good enough. But what happens? You have a really big tuple. Well, you can do something called extended unpacking, and you don't want to really. You want only the first few, and later you want to unpack some things, but not everything. So you can do something like this, right? A little bit more advanced example is something like this. So head second, so you get first, second, then something in between, right? So using this greedily this star symbol, right? On tail will be the last item in the tuple, right? So this is what we don't even have to worry about the length of the items, right? How many items are in a tuple? You'll get the first, second, right? Of course, again, if you remove second, it will move into rest, right? So let's run it, and yeah, you see that I have head, right? Head was, where's my head? Valdis, right? Ah, yeah, separate, yeah. So Valdis teacher, and then this part here, right, was the list. I believe no, this is the rest, right? And then at the end you have tail is the dictionary. So what happened is, right, so the rest becomes a list. That's the only sort of, it was a tuple, right? This inside there is actually a list, this part here, right? So something a little bit more advanced. All right, so that's basically it, right? Yeah, one thing I want to mention, yeah, so we've been using it all the time, right? That also tuples are used when we are returning function. So these tuples are used also. Tuples are used when returning multiple values from functions, right? So this will be a tuple, right? And of course, I'm sure you'll trust me on this because it's comma here, right? Oops, I saw, yeah, okay, I guess it didn't work. Yeah, 1.16, no, it worked. My screen went blank. Sorry about that. And so hopefully not yours. And yeah, we get the result. It is indeed tuple. And so now that you learn about unpacking, right? You could use this, right? You can immediately. So since this gives you tuple, you can unpack it. You don't need the tuple. You can just unpack the tuple immediately into 2 values. And again, you can do it in more. If you have 3 or 4, again, you could unpack it in 3 or 4 values. Again, as need arises, right? So, okay. And yes, there's for some advanced topics, maybe in this course we'll have some time, there's something called name tuples. A really cool thing is to read, but maybe not right now. And also, yeah, you can make a list of tuples, right? You can make a dictionary, right? You have a list of tuples, right? And you can convert this into a dictionary, right? So 2-dimensional. So of course a list of lists also would work, by the way. So it's not only tuples, right? So you have a list of tuples, you can convert it into a dictionary. Again, why? Because your keys then will be nicely mapped, because this type of structure will be harder to process. This dictionary will be easier and faster by the keys. All right, so thank you. Hopefully you got a good introduction to tuples. And next we will see about the last major data structure in Python, named sets. Something quite different, but I think also quite fun. So see you.